Hello, my most amazing artists. Spring is right around the corner. So think of it as the people that make you happy. They are like the charming little gardeners that help make your soul blossom. Spring has a way of bringing new life and new beauty to the world around us. So with that in mind, let's create some beautiful spring-inspired art. Welcome, my most amazing artists. Today we are going to be creating a 3D inspired Monet water lily. The materials you will need are watercolor paper, colored construction paper, watercolor, water and brush, salt, markers, colored pencils, and scissors, glue, and tape. The elements of art that we will focus on are line, color, and specifically form. We want to give our water lily a three-dimensional look, giving it height, width, and depth. So let's learn a little bit about Monet. He was a French painter and founder of Impressionism, a 19th century art movement characterized by relatively small, thin, yet visible brushstrokes. Emphasis was on accurate depiction of light and its ever-changing qualities, and often included scenes of nature. After an art exhibit in 1874, a critic insultingly dubbed Monet's painting style Impressionism, since it was more concerned with form and light than realism, and that term stuck. Monet struggled throughout his life with depression and poverty. If he could only see how influential his art has become. His story encourages artists everywhere to just be themselves, to be unique, and not allow criticism to discourage you from creating. The picture here is Monet's haystacks, sold for $110.7 million, the most expensive Impressionist painting to ever be sold. Towards the end of his life, he became exceptionally fond of painting controlled nature scenes, particularly his own gardens in France, with water lilies, ponds, and bridges. Here, Monet has a series of 3 paintings called a triptych. This beautiful reflections of clouds on the water lily pond can be seen in the MoMA in New York City and is absolutely breathtaking. Your I can statement is I can make a Monet-inspired 3D water lily using the elements of art, line, form, and color. To begin, we need our watercolor paper on a messy mat, which can just be any kind of scrap paper that you have laying around. Then you want regular salt. It could be iodized salt. I like to use a combination of that with sea salt, your cup of water, your paintbrush, and last but not least, your watercolor palettes. Doesn't matter what you have at home. You're going to dip your paintbrush in that water, get it pretty wet, and begin applying some water to your paper. Now, when we do this type of painting, we need our paper to be very wet. So you need a lot of water and a good amount of paint on your paintbrush. As I build up, I will use more and more paint and more pigment as I go along. So you can use any variety of blues, greens, purples, teals, whatever you have to make your water lily pond background. Now, again, there's no rhyme or reason. You're just applying the paint colors together. So you're not trying to really blend them in. You're just trying to soak the paper full of water and pigment or the paint. We need this to be very wet for our salt to be able to pick up and absorb the water and the pigment. So as you work, you're going to work in sections, sprinkling in the salt as you go. If you let the paint dry, this technique will not be successful. So I'm going to pour a little salt in a cup to make it easier to sprinkle, and then I'm just going to continue adding watercolors and my paint to the paper. Again, we're just concerned with covering the paper with our paint. Our salt is going to sort of blend the edges together, so it doesn't matter really what it looks like. Just continue working, and if you have a variety of salts, feel free to mix them. Again, you're going to start to notice as you work and the water is beginning to dry, you can see closely where the salt is absorbing the water and the pigment, creating these beautiful little unique crystallized almost bubbles. So it looks almost like real water with all of these different pixelations and tones. It's one of my favorite watercolor techniques. Now we need to let our paper dry for a few hours or overnight. I did mine overnight, and then I'm coming back to it and scraping off all of the salt that has dried onto it. So then you can fold up that messy mat and throw it in the trash so you have a nice clean space to work on your water lily. So you can be working on this while your background water is drying. You're going to draw like a big, almost circle shape, but without connecting it as a circle. And then you're going to create a diagonal line in towards the middle and another one that connects to the other side. It almost looks like a Pac-Man face. Once we have penciled in our outside shape, I'm going to grab a blue marker and just create some little veins and detail work inside my lily pad to give it some visual interest and make it look just a little bit more realistic. So you can just draw a series of lines that radiate out of the center of our lily pad. Now I'm going to go back in with my white colored pencils and color in some highlights. We are going to want to give our lily pad some realistic qualities by adding value. So that's going to be a process of layering a variety of colors of colored pencils. But before doing that, I'm going to outline my lily pad in that same blue marker. So I don't want them to have perfectly curved shape. It's an organic shape, so I want it to look a little irregular by adding some wavy lines in here or there. Now next, go ahead and start experimenting with a variety of different colors of your colored pencils, layering them, shading, and coloring the lily pad. Colored pencils are really fun on construction paper. It gives it a lot of depth because you already have that color sort of popping through. So as you color, make sure to leave some of that green construction paper showing through, but have fun using a variety of maybe purples and blues, greens, yellows, teals, whatever you might have to give this lily pad a very unique look. You've finished adding the details to your lily pad with your colored pencils, cut it out and set it aside. You now need either colored cardstock or construction paper or white cardstock and 2 different size circles to trace. We are going to be tracing 2 circles for our little blossom on top of our lily pad. So 2 circles. Once you've drawn your circles, I like to draw 2 smaller circles on the middle just to kind of give me guidelines to create my petals. So you're going to start by creating a petal, so like curved line that connects to a point at the top of your circle, just radiating all the way around, kind of going back to our radial symmetry lesson. So you're going to do this all the way around, and again, it's an organic shape, so these don't have to be perfect, and you can just play with them as you go, doing the exact same thing on the smaller circle as you just did on the bigger circle. Once you have finished drawing your flowers, you're going to grab your pair of scissors and cut them out. Before I do that, I like to just erase all of my guidelines so that all you can see are my petals. So again, you're going to want to cut nice and slow, making sure you don't accidentally cut any of your petals off. Erasing them and cutting them out, you're going to grab a pencil or a colored pencil and start curling your petals by starting at the tip of the petal and rolling it towards the middle. This is how we are going to create our 3D flower on top, giving it height, width, and depth. So now that we have all of our petals curled with our pencil, you can fold it in just a little bit more if you need to. Stick it inside, and then we have one more element of our 3D flower. So we're going to set all of our pieces aside and grab a colored piece of construction paper or your white, whatever you want. You're going to be cutting a strip, a nice straight strip. You don't need to measure this. It doesn't really matter size. You don't want it too big though. Once you do that, I like to use a colored pencil and just sort of color the edges. Again, you can skip this step if you would like. I just think it adds just one more extra little touch to make our Monet flower look a little bit more realistic. Once we have it colored, you're going to grab your scissors once again and just cut down that straight line that you drew with your ruler. Now next we are going to be creating our center part of the flower, making it 3D. Now this part is really important. You're going to cut small strips, leaving about a finger's length at the end of the other side of the paper. This part you're going to want to find your zen and cut really slow. The biggest mistake students do is they cut too fast, cutting all the way through the paper and having to start over. Now you can see all of my little pieces, and once you're done, you're going to start by rolling it together. Not necessarily folding it and pinching it, which it does get a little folded and squished, but do your best to try to roll it. So you're going to start from one end, find your patient hands, and go all the way to the end. Once you get to the end, you're going to need a small little piece of Scotch tape. You could use your glue, but it takes a while to dry and it can get a little messy. So I like to use tape, and you're just going to tape that little piece together so it's all connected now. And so now you can see we have the center part of our flower. What you're going to want to do is start to sort of fray the edges out and pull them apart without ripping them off. Now that you have all of the pieces of your lily pad made, it's time to assemble them. So I'm going to use some Elmer's glue and glue on my lily pad to my beautiful water. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of glue to the bottom of my flowers. Again, a little goes a long way. We don't want glue just seeping out everywhere. So press it down firmly and just repeat that process with the rest of the flower. Now, the center pistil might be a little bit tricky. I like to put the glue on the bottom, but you have to hold it for a little bit to get it to dry. So if at this point you've got a hot glue gun at home that your mom or dad wants to help you with, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, you have to just be patient and kind of hold it down nice and still until it dries. Well done creating a beautiful three-dimensional Monet-inspired water lily.